Hello and welcome to OPA GCSE Sociology, and today we're going to be looking at how has the family changed in the UK over the past 50 years. So if you remember the last lesson, we looked at the different family types in the UK, and we looked at rapport and rapport, who were essentially talking about those 5 different forms of family diversity. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go over very briefly those questions in the do now and lead up to what we've done over the last 2 to 3 lessons before we go on to looking at the underlying changes over the last 50 years. So number 1, what is the broad definition of the family? Number 2, what is the nuclear family? Number 3, what is a reconstituted family? Number 4, what are the 5 features of rapport and rapport's family diversity? And number 5, what is an extended family? Okay, so just give yourself a couple of minutes just to pause the video, answer those questions, and then we'll see how you compare after. Right, so just to go through those very quickly. So a broad definition of the family would be something along the lines of either just calling them families to acknowledge there's more than one family type, or something along the lines of what we done and simplified in class, where we talked about a household with people you are connected to by blood, law, or by some common bond. And then what is the nuclear family? So that is where you have a mother, a father, and children. Number 3, what is a reconstituted family? So that is 2 families where, or rather, 2 people in a relationship who have children from both had children from previous marriages, and they're either cohabiting together or married together. So things like stepmom, stepdad, stepbrothers, stepsisters. Rapport and rapport's 5 features. So I'm just going to come off of here just so I get the wording correct on these. Just from memory, that's just gone out of my mind very briefly. I want to get the correct terminology. So we have, first off, organizational diversity. So if we remember, it's the idea of different structures, different roles. Cultural diversity, so different cultures forming and different ideas about what the traditional family is coming into the UK. Social class diversity, so your family structure and roles may be different based on your class. Life cycle diversity, so the idea that your roles within the family might be different depending on where you are in your life. And then cohort diversity, so that's the idea that events in the world might change sort of the structure and the values and things like that within the family. And then finally, what is an extended family? So an extended family is essentially a bit like the nuclear family. So you've got mother, father, and children, but you've also got less immediate members within your family. So that might be your uncle, your aunt, your grandparents. Right, so for the first task, it's a bit difficult to read. I will leave it on the screen though, just in case, but there was this handout and another handout, a bit of data given to students, and essentially you had to guess how the family structure has changed over the last 50 years. So what I would like you to do have a look at the data and just see if you can work out if there are any changes. I will address them regardless anyway, what's increased, what's decreased, in case it's not clear to see. It's not the clearest graph. The other one was much better. But just give it a go, just pause the video for a minute or two and then just make down any predictions, write down any predictions that you've got about how the family structure has changed over the last 50 years. Right, so in essence, the families become a lot more diverse. There's a lot more diverse family types. So just to read a few things out that have become a lot more common. So there's a lot more couples without children. There's a lot more same-sex families being acknowledged in data. There's been an increase in cohabitation. There's been more same-sex cohabiting and more lone parent families. So we're going to be looking at why family structures are becoming more diverse and why there's been this not necessarily a massive decline of the nuclear family, but essentially a moving away of traditional family types. So in fact, what I would like you to do, just either with someone in your household or just on your own, try and think of some of those reasons, jot down some of the reasons you think families have become more diverse in the last 50 years. So just pause the video, note some ideas down. Right, so these are the reasons. We're going to see if they match up with yours. So there's greater benefits to lone parents, changes to the laws, changing values and attitudes, changing gender roles, employment opportunities, longer life expectancy, secularization, and increased immigration. So what we're going to do, and this is going to be the main part of the lesson, we're actually going to look at each one of those changes or explanations, causes for family to change in a bit more detail. So what I would like you to do, you can do this in the form of a table, you can just write notes on it, you can do it in a mind map, but just for each one, just write a bit more detail about each one of these causes. So we're going to start, I think, with the greater benefit to lone parents. Oh no, we're starting with changes to law. And yeah, just something to really acknowledge is what is the change? Why is it occurring? What impact is it having? So think about those questions as we go along. So the changes to law. So just going to read some of those changes out. So there's been a Divorce Reform Act since 1969, which made it easier for couples to escape unhappy marriages. So from that point, you only needed to prove that you were not living with your partner for 2 years. So you were 2 years apart to get a divorce. Whereas previously it would be very expensive and often not very successful in terms of getting divorced. So lots of people were unhappy married. Divorce between 1969 and 1972 more than doubled, reflecting that ease of divorce. So with 42% of marriages today ending in separation. In fact, some places it's even higher. There's also been the Equal Pay Act in 1970. So that's led to this feminization of the workplace. So it's encouraged a culture that normalizes women who work, not stigmatizing them. And it's encouraged alternative family types, partly because women might be less reliant on husband financially, but also they're making the choice to, and maybe putting more of a priority on things like career. We've also got the Marriage/Same Couples Act of 2013. So that's allowed same-sex couples to get married in England and Wales. So that's acknowledged by the government. And between 2014, or just in 2000, should be between 2013-14, there were a registered 15,098 same-sex couples legally married. So acknowledged by the government. So there's your first one to get down there. You might want to pause it. So the second one, changing social values and attitudes. So attitudes throughout the 20th and 21st century have changed towards family lifestyle and the expectations towards relationships. So today, because of those changing attitudes, people tend to get married later in life. So in 1972, the average age was 27 to get married. Today, in 2022, it's roughly 36. So 9-year difference. So what we're seeing is that perhaps couples are not necessarily seeing having a child as their biggest priority. So maybe they're prioritizing other things like traveling or their careers. More people choosing to cohabit and live on their own as well. And there's less stigma attached to same-sex couple relationships. So these changing attitudes are having an impact on other forms of family structures. There's also changing gender roles. So an increased number of women are now working and are no longer dependent on men for financial security. So women are now more likely to focus on their careers compared to in the past because of those opportunities. So for example, 47% of the workforce are now women. Compare that to maybe 50 years ago, it would have been a lot less. Not just in terms of the amount, but also in terms of the type of jobs as well. This has led to an increase in single parent families, single person households, cohabitation, all sorts of different diverse family types. And also less women are choosing to marry or have children. There's also greater benefits for lone parent families. So governments are providing a lot more support for those lone parents. So it makes it easier for individuals to get divorced or choose just to raise a child by their own. Previously, it was quite common to have housewives, and they might look after the children, perform domestic chores, and they might be unhappy within their marriage, some of them, because they are not dual earners. It's only the breadwinner who is the father who is the earner. So this has offered more financial independence. Employment opportunities. So as we've talked about previously, so there are far more opportunities for women to work today. However, despite this, only 15.1 million women work in 2017. 8.8 million are full-time, 6.3 part-time. So yes, there is this increase in opportunity, but it's not quite even yet. However, despite this, women are still more likely to stay in education longer today than 50 years ago. They're more likely to cohabit because of these greater employment opportunities and marry later in life, as we talked about previously. And they also have more control over their fertility. So that's partly to do with the contraceptive revolution in the 60s, but also as well, because of these employment opportunities, they're more career driven and perhaps delaying to have children consciously, and also financial stability again. Longer life expectancy. So people are living longer. The average UK life expectancy in 1900 was only 49, whereas today it's 81. Slightly different depending on your sex, but it's roughly that. This has meant that people are less likely to spend their life with one person, or they're likely to delay their marriage. Their thought process is either, seeing as I'm living longer, I'm not going to rush into a marriage. Or they might think, I'm spending more time, I'm more likely to spend more time in my life with this person. I don't want to be with that person. So whereas previously people were maybe unhappy in relationships and the partner died, that's not happening so much in terms of maybe they're divorcing, knowing that the likelihood is that that partner they're unhappy with is likely to live longer. Furthermore, there is an aging population. So elderly people need more support in terms of their health and finances. So that's led to an increase in extended family and beanpole family types, where the younger generations look after the elderly. Like we said, there's also been this secularization, this decline in religion. So that's led to a decline of traditional family types and values that perhaps have been influenced and underlined by religions. So Goad says, argues that marriage has become less of a sacred and spiritual union and more about a personal commitment and a practical convenience. So that's led to a rise in divorces and alternative family types that previously would have been seen as going against a religion. So for example, reconstituted families, so remarrying or cohabiting. In 2015, religious wedding ceremonies accounted for 26% of all marriages, compared to 50% in the 1980s. And then we've got increased immigration. So because of this greater access to transport, it's resulted in different styles of family. So there's been this different types of extended kingship. So no longer are people living in local extended families where you might live down the road from your aunts, uncles, grandparents, parents. Because of things like technological advances, things like social media, telephones, emails, Skype, Zoom, things like that, it's led to more dispersed extended families. So extended families that you're connected to from a distance. And migration's also led to a rise in multiracial children or dual heritage families, which has led to this hybridization of different ideas about what a traditional family is. So just make sure that you've got a summary for each one of those. So it is the changes to law, changes of values and attitudes, changing gender roles, greater benefits for lone parents, employment opportunities, longer life expectancy, declining religion, and increased immigration. So for the final task, what I'm going to get you to do, and you'll notice it's I've only done it at level 3, so 7 to 9 marks. There is logic to that. I'll explain it in a minute. But what you're going to do is you're going to answer this 12 marker. Discuss how far sociologists agree the changing gender roles in society are responsible for the increase in divorce since the 1960s. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to essentially, same as usual in paragraph 1, point evidence, explain, link it, starting with those who perhaps might agree with the changing gender roles being responsible for divorces. Then in paragraph 2, same structure, but you're going to talk about one of these other factors. And then for the conclusion, just summarize what you've discussed and then obviously come up with your own opinion with evidence. Now, like I said, I've made that a 7 to 9 marks as opposed to 10 to 12, purely based on missing out and an evaluation. So I'm going to come on to that in the coming weeks and the coming lessons.